I've worked as a nurse in several facilities over the years, but the experience I had at one geriatric hospital left a mark I'll never forget. This particular hospital specialized in Alzheimer's care, and though I was familiar with working with older patients, this place was unlike anywhere I had been before. I had only been on the job for a few weeks when the events that I'm about to recount happened. It was my second to last shift before I left that job for good, though I didn't know that at the time. That night, I was assigned to the Alzheimer's ward, where most of the residents seemed to enjoy having me around. Many of them saw me as a comforting presence, a connection to the present in a world where their minds often wandered to the past or got lost entirely. One patient in particular stood out that night. Her name was Lena, and this was my first time caring for her. She was different from the others, restless and frightened. She kept telling me she was hearing voices and seeing a man in black standing in the corner of her room. I tried to reassure her as best as I could, holding her hand and reminding her that she wasn't alone. The other woman sharing Lena's room had already requested that her curtain be drawn for the night. She wanted nothing to do with Lena's ramblings. I didn't blame her. Lena's fear was palpable and contagious. By 11 p.m., most of the patients were asleep, but not Lena. Every time I checked on her, she'd tell me about the voices, how they whispered things she didn't understand, and the man in black who stood silently, just watching her. I tried to calm her down, sitting with her and encouraging her to breathe deeply. Eventually, she seemed to relax, and the next time I came to her room, she was asleep. Once the patients are all asleep, time moves painfully slowly on the night shift. I was in the linen room, restocking my cart, when I heard a faint noise. It was a quiet but distinct sound, like someone shifting in the small, silent room. I turned, expecting to see someone there, but I was alone. Brushing it off, I continued my work. Then I felt it. A hand, large and firm, gripping my shoulder. I gasped and spun around, my heart racing, but there was no one there. My breathing quickened as I tried to make sense of what just happened. Stepping out into the hallway, I glanced around, but the ward was empty. The other nurses were nowhere in sight. I told myself I was just tired and imagining things, though deep down, I didn't believe it. Returning to the linen room, I finished stocking my cart and turned to leave. But as I faced the door, I saw him, a man in black, standing just outside the room's small glass window. He was smiling. I screamed and fell back against the wall, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. By the time I regained enough courage to move, the man was gone. Moments later, one of the other nurses rushed into the room, concerned by my scream. "There was a man," I stammered, "outside the door. He was watching me." The nurse looked confused. "What man? There's no one else here." We searched the ward together, checking every room and corner, but there was no sign of the man I had seen. By this point, my fear was palpable, and I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. When we entered Lena's room, she was awake, trembling, and whispering about the man in black. Her face was pale as she looked at me with a mix of fear and recognition. "Was he smiling?" I asked, my voice shaking. Her eyes widened. "How do you know that?" she whispered. The way she said it made my stomach churn. Then, as if on cue, she began to scream, her voice filled with terror. "Get me out of here! He's coming!" The other nurses worked to calm her, but I couldn't stay in that room. I was transferred to another ward for the rest of the night and eventually sent home early. The next day, I texted my supervisor, informing her that my upcoming shift would be my last. I couldn't go back to that place. To this day, I don't know what I saw, or if I really saw anything at all. Maybe I was influenced by Lena's descriptions. Maybe it was my lack of sleep. Or maybe, just maybe, it was something beyond explanation. Either way, it's an experience I hope I never relive.
It was a warm summer night, and I was driving home from a late shift at work. The time must have been close to 12:15 a.m. as I took my usual route, a quiet road bordered by a cornfield on one side and dense woods on the other. Living in a small town, I was used to these peaceful, empty roads. The night air was warm, around 75 degrees, so I had the top down on my convertible. The drive was relaxing, until I heard it, a scream. The sound was so sudden and blood-curdling that I instinctively slammed on the brakes. It was a woman's voice, full of terror, but I couldn't pinpoint where it was coming from. For a few moments, I sat frozen, listening. Then I heard it again, a desperate cry for help, this time coming from the woods on my left. Grabbing the baton I kept in the backseat, I stepped out of the car and cautiously approached the tree line. "Who's out there?" I called, my voice echoing in the stillness. "Please, help me," the woman cried, her voice trembling. Every instinct in me told me to help, so I began moving into the woods, swiping branches and underbrush out of my way as I followed her voice. "Keep yelling so I can find you," I shouted. Every 10 seconds or so, the woman screamed again, and I adjusted my path toward the sound. But something felt off. No matter how far I ran, her voice never seemed to get any closer. It was always the same distance, as if she were deliberately staying ahead of me. I stopped, my chest heaving from the effort of running. "Where are you?" I yelled again, and her voice came, eerily distant but clear. "Help me." At that moment, a wave of unease washed over me. This wasn't right. My gut told me I was walking into a trap. Without another word, I turned and started running back toward the road, ignoring the branches and twigs clawing at my arms and legs. As I neared the edge of the woods, I saw the flashing headlights of my car in the distance. Relief flooded me, but the woman's screams didn't stop. They were still the same distance away, echoing behind me, as though she were following me. I jumped into my car, started the engine, and sped away, leaving the woods and the chilling cries behind. My hands shook as I drove, adrenaline coursing through me. Once I was a safe distance away, I pulled over and called 911 to report what I'd experienced. Though I felt guilty for not staying to help, my instincts told me I had made the right choice. A week later, I saw a news report that made my blood run cold. The body of a woman in her 30s had been found in those same woods by a hiker walking his dog. According to the report, there were no signs of foul play, and the cause of death remained unclear. Though the woods stretched for miles, the location where her body was found matched the general area where I had heard the screams. I couldn't shake the thought, was it her voice I had heard? Or had I narrowly avoided becoming the next victim of something far more sinister?